illegal. So first off, mostly everybody knows the overthrow, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So what happened with the overthrow was the United, a bunch of Hawaiian citizens. They were Hawaiian citizens, but haole.
Right.
So they were white people, but they were citizens of the Kingdom of Hawaii. So what they did was they got this guy from the U.S., the
Mhm.
Minister Stevens. He's like a branch of the government of the United States to help them uh, go and take over Hawaii, right? So he had them land U.S. Marines on the shores to help defend them. And the only way that you can legally, even that is not really right, but the supposed way that you're able to take over a country is you have to have like the three main branches of government under control. So there's the judicial house, the palace, and the guard, like the fort. There's a fort by the Queen's Palace,
Mhm.
right?
Where's the
So you have to have
bathroom
full
of it?
control of all three of them. So it's they tried to gain all control, but instead what they did was
What?
they had a cart with guns, full of guns, like down the street, and everybody ran because they heard, oh, there's guns and blah 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 blah. So they had a few, like maybe 20 something Holly people go to the back stairs of the palace and read a proclamation saying that, oh, we're taking over the government. So that's how they took over the government. And then they landed the troops on to protect the taking over of the government. So they didn't even have all three under control. They didn't have any of them under control until they landed U.S. troops. So when they landed U.S. troops, you're not supposed to do that because Hawaii and the U.S. had treaties, right?
Mhm.
Treaties of peace between each other. And the only way that U.S. troops can land on come off the ship is if the queen says, hey, you guys can come practice. So the U.S. minister did that without permission from the government. So anyways, I'm going to shorten it for you guys. So the president of the United States finds out about this, like the Queen petition, handed over power to the President of the United States uh, because she didn't want to give her power to those people who tried to take over. So said, hey, President, I'm passing on this power to you to undo the wrong that was done because they weren't supposed to do that. So the president sent over a high official to the Hawaii to find out what really happened. And the guy like went to both sides, like didn't take anything from anybody because he didn't want to be persuaded or whatever. And he came back and filled out what they call the Blount report. And the Blount report pretty much says, hey, this was wrong. We're not supposed to be here. We need to leave right now. We need to give back the permission. Yeah. So they ended up, the president announced, hey, we're not doing this, blah, blah, blah. So that's when the Haole people, uh, they already had a militia. You know what a militia is? Like citizens with guns, pretty much. They're the citizens' military.
Okay.
So they had a bunch of Holly people with guns already. So instead, because they wanted to join the United States, but since the States said no, they're like, get out, United States. We're taking over instead. But we still like you because we want to eventually join you, kind of thing. So anyway, so that whole part was illegal because they weren't supposed to land troops and all that kind of stuff. But what a lot of people don't know is the second part, the statehood, because the Republic of Hawaii wasn't a real government, technically, according to international laws. So the territory of Hawaii wasn't a real territory because you can't be a part of the United States because there's this thing called sovereignty. You know what sovereignty is? Yes. Sovereignty is like the right to rule yourself, like.
As if people sometimes you see them on side of the road or whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, they're talking about sovereignty,
Right,
but every like different countries have sovereignty. Like France has sovereignty over their people and over their land. Germany has sovereignty, so each country has sovereignty. So,
Okay.
anyways, so after World War II, there was a whole thing called decolonization. You guys know what that is? Decolonization. You know how like all the European powers, Japan, the United States, they all had colonies everywhere, right?
Mhm.
So a huge issue with the two world wars was colonies, and people started realizing, hey, that's wrong. They need to be able to rule themselves. Like their native people need to be able to rule themselves. So what they did was the UN, you know what the UN is,
Mhm.
which the United States is a part of and was a founder of, made a proclamation that all have a huge list of countries that were taken over and were colonized and needed to be given the choice to be their own countries again. Okay?
Okay.
So Hawaii was on that list because Hawaii was taken over by the US.
Okay.
Even though that whole thing was messed up. So what the United States did was in order to decolonize, the people of that nation or wherever they were had to be given a vote of what they wanted to do. They had to have three choices. Either stay whatever you are, so like a territory or whatever you want to call it, a colony. You can stay whatever you are, be a part of that country, like branch, like become a part of Japan or become a part of the U.S. Or become sovereign, become independent. Okay, so those three things.
And Hawaii was sovereign before any of this, right?
Before any of this, by 1843 or something like that, they had already become a part of the. They were the first non-European nation to become a part of what they call the League of Nations, or not the League of Nations, but what is it called? The World of Nations. Anyways, it's recognized states like
Okay.
France, England, the U.S., like all these major powers who are like considered civilized and were a part of like all these nations. They were recognized as a nation. So that's when like 1840 something. That's when, and they set up treaties like 50 something treaties with countries all around the world. Like when King Kalakaua went and did a world tour, he went and he made treaties with all these, solidifying the fact that we were a nation. So they held sovereignty. So what they also, so you have the three votes, right? The three choices. And another rule that they had was that the people of that country had to choose. So like the civilians of the Kingdom of Hawaii got to choose, or their descendants, right? So whoever was there prior to the overthrow, kind of thing.
Wait.
Hello, Mom keeps telling me to clean. I have to finish.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So they had to choose. Okay. So you had those two main things, and then another thing was propaganda. You weren't allowed to try and influence the vote in any way. So the United States wasn't supposed to influence. Okay. So on the vote panel, the vote split, instead of three choices, they only had two choices. Guess what those choices were?
To become a state or a territory, right?
Yes. They left off becoming
Sovereign.
So
Why?
they didn't have a choice because they didn't want that. They didn't want Hawaii
to
be sovereign.
So that's not fair.
Exactly. It's not fair, and it's not right, and it's illegal against
So
international
who's the
law.
person that does the split?
Well, the United States set up the vote thing.
I know, but
Government.
who?
I don't know who exactly did it.
Oh.
I don't know if they have documents of that. But they only had two votes. So either be a territory or be a part of the United States. So the thing with that one is, when World War II started, when the United States joined, and bombed Pearl Harbor and all that kind of stuff, what happened was the military took over all of Hawaii. It's called what is it called? Do you know what it's called, Mom? When the military takes over, martial law. So everything ran through the military. If you got busted, like say the cops pulled you over or something, you had to go to military court.